I am so glad you convinced me that the family car should be the Defender 110. It is so beautiful inside, it's so comfortable, and it just feels indestructible.
Yes, it really is. I've been waiting a long time for the new model to come out. The Defender 110, I'm telling you, it's my favorite car of all times. It's my third one. You know, I have stories of going off road. The guy managed the group. He was like, "What are you doing in this beautiful car?" I'm like, "I'm going off road." He's like, "Are you sure? Because you can use one of ours." And then they look like Mad Max cars. I'm like, "No, no, 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 we're going to do this." And he was shocked.
Wow. Well, it's great because the Defender has been reimagined for 21st century adventure, and its unparalleled off road ability, as well as its robust interior, are invaluable whether you're headed towards uncharted territory or just a weekend of exploration. The Defender 110 tackles challenging surroundings with absolute confidence. The SUV conveys strength outside and in, featuring peerless technology like an intuitive driver display and an award-winning infotainment system. That's my favorite part, to keep you connected no matter where the journey takes you. Adventure is unique to everyone, and so is the Defender. Choose from the two-door Defender 90, the four-door Defender 110, or the larger Defender 130 with the ability to seat up to 8 passengers. You'll find uncompromising performance in all three. So pack up and go even further with the Defender 110. Learn more at LandRoverUSA.com/Defender.
Today's show is brought to you by us, the Choose Yourself Network. One of the most common questions covered on that podcast and by our guests is about self-publishing. James has written a lot on the topic and sold hundreds of thousands of books by leaving the traditional publishers behind. It takes a little guts to take on that risk, but James has narrowed all of the secrets of self-publishing your own bestseller into a single checklist. You can get it at www.jamesaltucher.com/bestseller. If you're thinking about writing or just want to publish your own ideas, it's a must-read. Check it out today at jamesaltucher.com/bestsellers and download your free guide. That's jamesaltucher.com/bestseller. BESTSELLER. Thanks for listening, and now here's today's show.
Don't let the mysteries of life scare you away. Instead, ask Altucher. Here's James Altucher.
Hey, so
Hey.
how's my audio? Is everything coming in fine?
Everything's coming in fine, and we're already recording. This app on the phone, records automatically.
Okay, great.
Okay, so Scott Young, the who did the infamous MIT experiment, you basically took $2,000 in less than a year, and you completed, using their free course curriculum online, you completed a 4-year computer science degree at MIT. So instead of spending $300,000, you spent $2,000.
Well, let me explain a bit more briefly, because it does come with a few caveats, and I think it's important to understand those. But I think it's also important to understand what I was trying to do. So MIT puts a lot of their courses, as well as a lot of big Ivy League universities, up online for free. Basically, the way they used to do it was for the last 10 years, they've been doing it through this program called OpenCourseWare, where they'll just tell the professor, hey, we'd like to record the lecture videos and just, all the PDFs for the assignments, the PDFs for the solution sets you use. We just want to put them online, and then that way anybody can go and essentially take this class.
Why would they do that? Why would they do that, though, considering they charge so much for these classes? Why would they just put them up for free? Because they know that nobody cares about skills. Employers just care about the piece of paper. So the skills for them actually have no value. It's just a piece of paper from MIT that they know has the value.
Well, I think, there is a signaling reason for that, but I think also part of the reason is that MIT and these Ivy League universities are turning down huge volumes of students. So they're not having a problem of, well, if we put this stuff up for free, not enough people are going to apply to MIT. And I think everybody would like to have an MIT education from the school if they could have it. And I think their idea is that we're going to get our brand out there, our sort of way of teaching, our materials, that's going to definitely help the institution by, promoting the MIT school philosophy by giving out this material for free. So more specifically, what I did is I basically just decided, they have all this material for free. Trying to make an exact equivalency with an MIT degree is not going to be perfectly possible. What I'll do is I'll make a curriculum that's same number of credit hours, same requirements, and just try to pass the final exams and do the programming project. So it's a bit of a simplification of a real degree, but I think it has, largely the same. You're learning the same stuff, learning the same classes, learning a lot of the same material that an actual MIT student would do. But of course, you're not going to Boston. You're not paying all the money for tuition.
So a couple of comments. One is, on every article where there was comments about you afterwards, 100% of the MIT students basically criticized you. Like, they hated the fact that they were spending $200,000 and you spent almost nothing. And of course, you didn't get the exact same education that they got. They were there. They took humanities classes. They became friends with each other and networked and so on. But you got essentially the same computer science skills. It's not like the professors can interact one-on-one with every single student there.
Yeah, I think there's two parts of it. So one of it is the thing that you're talking about, this kind of MIT students are people who have played by the rules their whole life and been very good at it. They got into MIT, they got into this incredible institution. And in many ways, I'm doing something that's breaking the rules. And so whether or not they can put their finger on what they dislike about it, I think that there's something kind of, you broke the rules. You're supposed to apply to MIT, go to school there, go to curriculum. That's part of it. And then the second part is that I was a little bit more ambitious. I decided, considering I'm making this simplification to, I want to pass the final exam through the programming project, so I don't have to attend lectures on a particular schedule. I can use the assignments as sort of as a learning tool, but I don't have to, write essays or give presentations and stuff. I'm taking a bit of a shortcut. So I decided, if I'm taking these shortcuts, maybe I could do it in a year instead of over the normal 4-year process that an MIT student would do. And so I think just the fact that not only am I breaking rules in terms of I'm not going the road you're supposed to go in terms of learning this information, but I'm also saying, hey, maybe I could get most of the value I wanted to get out of it in a quarter of the time, I think also upset some sensibilities.
And do you feel like you did learn computer science? Like, I know you had taken some computer courses before, but do you feel like you got the knowledge?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like of what MIT was teaching, I felt like I learned the best I could. Now, does that mean that I know everything about computer science? Obviously not. I think someone who's a professional programmer, they have a lot more specific skills than I do. If you went to get a PhD, obviously you have more skills than I do in theoretical knowledge.
Scott, sorry to interrupt, but let me just correct that. So I'm a computer science major, and I went to graduate school for computer science, and you probably know more computer science than me at this point.
Well, I don't know about that, but I would say that what I did learn and what I think I really like about the MIT curriculum is they give you this very broad understanding of a lot of the theory of computer science, of mathematics, and in science in general. Like, a lot of the things that I had to do in the MIT curriculum, which are not part and parcel of other computer science programs, is I had to take a class in physics. I had to take some classes in electrical engineering. There was one class where you had to, using a simulator, you had to build a CPU from scratch, which is not really what they teach in a lot of schools that focus more on programming. So I really liked that about the MIT curriculum. There's pros and cons to it, but I think in terms of what an MIT learns going through the actual classes, I would say that I got most, if not, very comparable to what they would be learning.
And do you think an employer, if you said this to an employer, and let's say you were up against kind of an MIT computer science student, do you think the employer would actually say, hey, this guy has a lot of initiative and he's got the education, as opposed to just saying this other guy has just got the education? Or would he err on the side of the degree?
So that's a really interesting question, because when I finished this challenge and it came out, now I'm a writer. That's what I do for a living. That's what I did before this challenge. It's what I do now. So I didn't really have any particular desire to pursue programming as a profession. I just wanted to be able to practice this and work on my own project. But when I did the challenge, and after I was finished, one of the videos that I posted became popular on Reddit, and it was getting tons and tons of comments from And the majority of the comments were this exact thing. They were like, it's too bad that this guy put in all this work and no employer would even consider him without having an actual degree. And interestingly, in those same comments, there were HR representatives for firms saying, this is exactly the kind of person we want, someone who can teach themselves things quickly, shows initiative, shows that kind of stuff. And I actually spoke to someone under the condition of anonymity, but who works in one of the big software companies. And he was, trying to encourage me, hey, if you want to apply, I can get you an interview here. I think they'd be really interested in having you there at the company. So it was very interesting to see this dichotomy that the general public's reaction was that there's no way anyone would hire you if you did this without the degree. And the people who were actually hiring saying, like, look, this is actually the kind of person that we would want at our team. So for me, it was very interesting to see that contrast.
That's funny. And now, so that was, you finished that in 2012. Now in 2015, the landscape's even better because I think A, there's slightly more acceptance of people who don't have college degrees, and B, the online educational resources are even greater. Like Coursera is greater, Udemy or Udacity, all these different sites, lynda.com, all of these sites are much more, offer many more courses than they did in 2012. So I think you can get even more sophisticated in how you teach yourself online than even back in 2012.
Oh, the landscape's changed entirely. It's kind of crazy to talk about this because I only did this a few years ago. But when I did this, none of these MOOC or these massively open online course platforms existed. So there was no edX, there was no Coursera, there was no system where you could go in there, take the class, it would be graded independently. There would be someone to give you a certificate if you pay for the special track where you get a certificate after. There was no accreditation. So I had to, basically mine was a lot more makeshift. I had to just download this material, grade the exams, post them online for people to review. It was a real do-it-yourself process. And so that's why whenever I hear people being overly pessimistic about online education, I feel like, it's only been around really in this format for a couple years. And even I think when I did it, it was probably about the earliest that you could have done something like this. And so now I think the idea that someone could get, maybe not a degree, but huge volumes of education independently verified by third parties for free or for very low cost is going to be, it's not possible right now. It's going to be the norm pretty soon.
Like, let's say you have kids and I don't know, let's say 15 years from now, they're ready for, to make a decision about a college and they're either going to spend $300,000 on MIT or they can do what you did. What would you encourage them to do? What would you force them to do?
I don't know. Well, first of all, I would say that I'm not in my philosophy towards that is that, my kids would make the decision for themselves. But I think I wouldn't tell anyone to turn down an opportunity to go to MIT. I think if you get into that school, that's a great education. I think what I would stress is that going to school and now I think more than anything is about getting that piece of paper, getting that degree. However, teaching yourself the skills you need to succeed in the workplace, that's something that is now, I think, quite separate. And for me, I do think that a degree is still important for some fields. If I want to be an engineer or a lawyer, not having a degree is not an option. So I wouldn't tell someone who wants to pursue those things that, okay, you can just do what I did. But on the other hand, I think that even if you are an engineer or even if you are a lawyer, the environment that we're living in now in the career space is that you need to be updating your skills constantly. You need to be learning new things constantly. And this idea that, okay, I'm going to go back to school and learn X or I'm going to take this course in X is just not practical for a lot of people. And yet they're being held back by sort of their new colleagues that have learned things that they didn't have a chance to learn in school. So I think that really there's this environment of continuous self-education, which is really become easier and easier with these new platforms.
And you've kind of evolved into the next step, which is learning languages. So what are you doing in that area? Because it seems like you're very multilingual.
Yeah, so that was after the MIT challenge finished. It actually originally just started. I had a friend who was going to take a gap year before he went and did a master's, and we were talking about, while we can, let's do a trip, let's plan some travel. And then this idea came around of, well, what if we wanted to try to learn languages as sort of the orienting, like that would be what the trip was about. And then a lot of conversations, and sort of a year of planning later, we set out to do this project where not only were we going to try to learn languages, but the way that we were going to try and learn languages was through complete immersion. Basically, when we would go to the country, we wouldn't speak in English, not even to each other, just the language that we're trying to learn. And that became a year of our lives learning these languages.
And how did you start off if you didn't know like the language? Like how would you communicate to even each other?
So good question. The truth is, for all of the languages we did do a little bit of preparation. So we would do probably about 20 hours or so learning some basic phrases, just, something you could probably do in an audio tape on your way to work, monthly commute. Not a lot of practice, certainly not enough to even be able to do very basic things. And then what we did is with that basic knowledge, basically we would sit down and when we had to talk to each other, we would have our phones open up a dictionary application or a Google Translate, and we would just use that. And that became sort of this basis. And as you say the words and the phrases more and more often, as you use them in more situations, they just become automatic. You don't have to think about them anymore until actually surprisingly quickly, you're now only looking up sort of obscure words or obscure phrases. You're actually, most of the time, you're able to get by without having to look up anything.
Well, what's the best app or what's the best learning applications for starting to learn a language right now?
Sure. I would say that this is going to be kind of a surprise, but one of my favorites, and it gets some criticism for not being 100% accurate, but I give it points for being very, very easy to use, is just getting Google Translate on your phone. And I think the real advantage of the app here is that if you're putting yourself in conversation situations, putting yourself in situations where you have to communicate, you just open the app, you type in what you need to say, and in the beginning, it can help you a little bit with grammar as well. The problem with dictionaries is often just knowing the words is only half of the problem. If you know Spanish, for example, you have to conjugate all the verbs. You have to match masculine and feminine. You have to do these things. And so it's not always possible to just word for word translate for English and have that make sense in Spanish. So using Google Translate can also help you bridge that gap until you get to a later stage where, okay, now I can just use a dictionary because I understand the grammar well enough.
So you
wouldn't
recommend like Duolingo? Would you recommend Duolingo or anything?
Duolingo's okay. Another one that's good is Anki. I like Anki because it's a little bit more flexible. Memrise is good. All these things are good. I don't want to say that they're bad applications, but I think sometimes they can be distractions because they get you into thinking that what you're trying to do when you're learning a language is an intellectual challenge, that the main challenge is that I have to memorize all these words and phrases. And what the real challenge in learning a language, from my experience, is this social challenge, this idea of speaking something that you are not very confident in with someone who is confident in that language, dealing with the confusion, the embarrassment, dealing with the fact that I don't really want to speak to that person. If you can get through that, then a lot of the stuff that you do learn in Duolingo, that you learn in Memrise or these other applications will just come through that process. And I would say that they are useful, but a lot of people choose to use them as a substitute because they're less socially threatening. They're less, they don't inspire the same kind of fear, the same kind of nervousness that actually speaking to someone does.
And so how do you get, so given that you have the basic, actually the first question I want to ask is, what,
sure.
I know in Spanish you need to know, okay, this is male, this is female, all that stuff. But what if you decide not to learn that? So, because you're obviously going to be, no matter what, you're going to be the dumb American anyway. So why not just say, okay, everything is male or everything is female, and I don't care what people think about me, because they're going to think bad anyway. They're still going to understand you, even if you don't kind of have the right sexuality for every object.
Oh, definitely. And actually, it was funny when we went to Spain. So I'll have to explain a little bit about Spanish grammar, but there's basically every verb has this form called the infinitive, which is like in English saying like to want, to love, to have. It doesn't refer to any person doing the action. And you cannot say verbs, like you can't just say yo pedir for like I ask in Spanish. You can't do that. It's not grammatical. It sounds strange. It's very weird. But my friend Matt, because he didn't learn a lot of it like book learning stuff. He was learning it through practice. Probably for about the first 2 or 3 weeks, maybe even getting towards a month, he literally only used that form to speak to everyone. They understood him for the most part. And then once he was comfortable speaking, then it was, okay, now is the time to like, actually I have to improve this. I actually have to start saying things properly. I have to start improving how well you speak. And the same thing with masculine and feminine. I think worrying about those things too much is kind of a mistake. Your goal initially is just to get people to understand what you're saying at all, not worry about correctness. Correctness can come a little bit later down the road, because I found, contrary to some other people who believe differently, I do think that if you are aware of it, it is possible to correct your mistakes for grammar later, even if you've been making mistakes earlier.
So you mentioned earlier you're making a living now as a writer. So how is that working? Like so you're traveling around, you're taking MIT classes, you're doing all this. What do you actually? I know you have a very popular blog. What's the URL for it so people know?
ScottHyoung.com.
Scott with 2 T's, hyoung.com. And so how are you monetizing your writing?
Right. So I've actually been writing from before I did the MIT challenge, before I did this other project. And basically I have ebooks, and I also have some courses that I sell infrequently on the website. And luckily the website's large enough that I don't have to be, spamming about it. It's just I can just sell those things on the back end, and I'm on the front end. I can focus on, writing articles, writing essays about learning better and productivity, and also, sharing these experiments that I've been doing.
And are you selling books on like productivity, or what's the main thing you're selling? Like, what's the highest source of income?
Yeah, the main thing that I'm selling that I make money from is I have courses that basically teach studying skills of learning philosophy. So a way that you can approach learning any subject. It guides you through sort of a process of giving you specific tactics that I've sort of come across in my own research and also my own experience doing these kinds of projects. This is a better way of doing this, and I teach those in those courses and ebooks.
And is that good enough? Like you were able to quit your job, and this is like your full-time source of living.
Yeah, it's been full-time for the last, I believe, I want to say 4 or 5 years, I guess. It's been full-time, and it's been doing quite well. I think there really is nowadays, if you have something that people are interested in and you can build an audience, I think it is possible to, make a living from it. And I think that that's, a good alternative to just having to do everything on the side.
If I remember correctly from your blog, I think you said it took you 5 years to get to the point where you were making a living, and then another 3 years before you were making like a good living.
Yeah, well, this is the thing too, and I wouldn't say that my timeline is representative for everyone. I took a long time to figure things out, but I think that the big thing about building a business online or building a presence online, as I'm sure you know, is that it takes time. It takes time for Google to pick you up. It takes time for other people to become aware of you, and this growth compounds. So when you first start writing, nobody's reading you, so nobody can link to you. Nobody can give you that break. But you slowly accumulate more traffic. And there's not like this one breakthrough moment, but there's just lots of little moments where maybe you'll get picked up by a larger blog, or a news site will link to you, or you'll, be asked to come on a podcast or something. And then that gives more people find out about you. And I think if you're writing stuff that people find helpful, find interesting, think is useful, then I believe that you can make a go of it.
Well, that's great. Well, Scott, where do you want people to find you the best? Like, so ScottHyoung.com is kind of like your internet home?
Yes, ScottHyoung.com. You can find out about the MIT challenge this year without English language learning project, and I have tons and tons. I have over 1,000 free articles explaining my philosophy towards productivity and learning and entrepreneurship.
And look, I actually hope my kids do what you did and just kind of like learn kind of home college, like learn from home on their own, and that's what I hope they eventually do. For cheaper.
Thanks. Well, I hope that it becomes something that, everybody can do.
Yeah, because also there's the whole, like you said, you're going to allow your kids obviously to make their own choices, which makes sense and sounds reasonable. But at the same time, your kids might not be at the age of 18. Kids are not. They might not be mature enough to make a $300,000 debt decision. You know, it's a big decision for them. They're going to waste 4 or 5 years of their life and $300,000, and they might not have. I know this from the emails I get. They're going to change their careers anyway after they graduate college.
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. And when I'm faced with that bill for $300,000, I might change my previous policy.
Yeah. Well, thanks very much, Scott. Thanks for agreeing to join me on the podcast, and I will talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Scott. Bye.
For more from James, check out the James Altucher Show on the Stansberry Radio Network at stansberryradio.com and get yourself on the free insiders list today.
AI might be the most important new computer technology ever. It's storming every industry, and literally billions of dollars are being invested. So buckle up. The problem is that AI needs a lot of speed and processing power, so how do you compete without costs spiraling out of control? It's time to upgrade to the next generation of the cloud, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or OCI. OCI is a single platform for your infrastructure, database, application development, and AI needs. OCI has 4 to 8 times the bandwidth of other clouds, offers one consistent price instead of variable regional pricing, and of course, nobody does data better than Oracle. So now you can train your AI models at twice the speed and less than half the cost of other clouds. If you want to do more and spend less, like Uber, 8x8, and Databricks Mosaic, take a free test drive of OCI at oracle.com/advance. That's oracle.com/advance. oracle.com/advance.